Yo, I've returned from posting garbage after garbage. Don't expect much improvement in terms of quality when it comes to this video, as this time we're talking about anime. I'm planning on uploading more anime related content as opposed to the cartoon stuff because it's more widely available and I'm not watching TV now that Kiss Cartoon is down. I mean Verve. Not just anime either. Been gaming recently, love to talk about those, and maybe even some real people things. So I apologize for each and every one of you newcomers who recently joined because of that cartoon stuff. We're putting that on hold. Also, don't expect the video games to be anything too trendy. I can't get the PS5 because I'm poor. So, what are we doing today? I'll tell you what we're doing today. We're gonna be comparing the show BNA, or Brand New Animal, with Tokyo Ghoul, the manga, as the anime adaptation sucks. Oh, the anime sucks. Specifically, how Tokyo Ghoul tackles the same concept as BNA, but better. I mean, they both have a racial divide between the humans and some made-up magical species, a main character that used to be human but then turns into some fusion between the two, and from that gains a unique viewpoint or perspective on the situation, as well as being able to properly understand the two sides. A fresh, albeit whack, doctor, a person of the made-up species who blindly hates humans, a haven where the magical species can stay safe from the humans. You get the gist. This video will be divided into nice digestible chunks / categories, which we will grade the two by. Disclaimer, I am exactly 40 chapters short of finishing the manga, but we're not really going too in-depth on the story, so I'll let that slide. And yeah, nothing left to say, is there? Both stories have a heavy focus on the divide and conflict between the humans and the fake people, so they obviously need to sell you on their world. If I can't immerse myself and believe a world like Tokyo Ghoul or BNA exists, I'll have a hard time believing the problems exist, and I'll have a hard time caring for the people affected by said problems. Let's look at a good example. Tokyo Ghoul. If, for whatever reason, you're a boomer and don't know what a ghoul is, let me help. Ghouls are creatures that are almost human but aren't. They have superhuman strength, virtually impenetrable skin, crazy reflexes, and they have this awesome thing called a kagune, which comes out of their backs and makes their eyes cool black. Oh yeah, they eat humans. They can't get any nutrients from normal food apart from coffee for some reason. Because of this, the only way they can live is by consuming human meat. Does that sound stupid to you? Because it sounded stupid to me at first. As the story goes on, what seemed like a totally unbelievable and unrealistic concept starts to make sense. The author goes in extreme detail on ghoul biology, dropping stuff like RC cells, different types of ghouls, kakuho, and kakuja. All of that weird crap you saw has a function. And maybe this is because I'm dumb and stupid, but reading it I was like, damn bruh, ghouls real? If you still don't believe me, it's because I'm not going into enough detail, and I won't because my last video was way too long. Bad example, BNA. The moment we are thrust into the world of BNA, we're introduced to the conflict right off the bat. Humans hate beastmen, and they've been doing so for a very long time. Now, beastmen are again creatures who are almost human but aren't. They have a special gene in their body that enables them to change into a certain animal. After having to deal with human oppression for so long, they build this beastman-only city called Animacity so they can enjoy Athrocon in peace. Okay, why? For the longest time, we aren't given a reason as to why the humans hate the beastmen. What, is it because they look different? That's totally unrealistic. Well, I'm just trying to find a world that's better written than this one. Links in the description if you still want to help support the BLM movement. While this mystery box style of writing can work for certain shows, I think in this case it just makes things confusing. I'm not saying I want the whole anatomy of a beastman explained in the first episode, because even before we knew exactly how ghouls work, we at least knew the conflict came from the eating humans thing. BNA did have something close with Pingo the albatross, where his natural instincts as an albatross make him want to migrate, but due to customs and border laws, complications arise. It's not much, but it's what I would have wanted. The show does give a reason eventually, but it makes things more confusing if anything. I would explain why, but I consider us bros, yeah? Homies, even. I care about you, and if for whatever reason you want to watch BNA and don't want to be spoiled, skip to this timestamp. You're gone? Okay. Because all beastmen have a beast factor, the gene that allows them to change into an animal, they have this animalistic sense of territory. If their territory were to be invaded by a beastman of a different species, they will be at risk to Nilvasil syndrome, where if they are put under extreme stress or pressure while their territory is being invaded, they'll become extremely violent. The syndrome was named after the great city of Nilvasil, a haven where beastmen of all different walks of life lived and thrived. It fell due to, well, Nilvasil syndrome. After that, beastmen were scattered all over the world and weren't harming anybody. The weird thing is, nobody knows about the syndrome. One of the characters in the show, Alan Silvesta, figured it out, and it comes as a shock to everybody. That meant that for thousands of years, humans thought Nilvasil mysteriously disappeared and were mindlessly killing peaceful beastmen. It could be argued that they were being killed due to hunting reasons, but they don't tell us, so... Also, in Tokyo Ghoul, once you're born a ghoul, you stay a ghoul for the rest of your life. So, why is it that in this show, you can remove the beast factor to turn a beastman into a human? And why is it presented as a bad thing? Who would want to stay being a beastman? All it does is oppress you and traps you in this city where you're constantly at risk for a dangerous mental disorder. Here's how I do it. Make it so that humans know Nilvasil fell because the beastmen went crazy but are unaware of Nilvasil syndrome, so they're misguided into having the stigma that beastmen are violent and dangerous at all times and you can't trust them no matter what. Also, the only way you'll stop being a beastman is if you're dead. What else you gotta sell me on other than the world, the people living in it? Tokyo Ghoul follows Kaneki Ken, a young college student who, after suffering a fatal injury, gets organs transplanted from a ghoul, and in turn, he becomes a half-ghoul. He starts off with this really bland sense of justice and what's right, going through life believing that true kindness is to always help others, and it's okay if you get hurt as long as the person you're helping doesn't. Obviously, such a black and white way of thinking won't fly in a world as complex as Tokyo Ghouls, and after living as a human around humans, a ghoul around humans, a human around ghouls, and a ghoul around ghouls, he starts to learn that. It's cool because he's still this empathetic and kind person, but his thinking is a lot more complex, and it keeps his actions unpredictable, so you genuinely don't know what he'll do. Or, this could all be bias, and I'd like to say it's because my parents come from totally different backgrounds, but realistically, it's probably because I'm still in middle school, but I think Kaneki is cool. And I like to imagine myself as him sometimes. Hear me out. I wouldn't be caught dead wearing this in public, but this would look cool on a black hoodie, come on. Next up is Toka. She's not that different from the rest of the ghouls, but I'm fine with that. Living as a ghoul means living under the constant pressure of death, either from not eating enough humans or not covering your tracks well enough and getting killed by the ghoul investigators. You also have to live a life full of lies in order to fit into human society. When you're living like that, there's not much room for uniqueness. Even so, Toka manages to have some pretty interesting family problems. Life is hard for the humans too, with them obviously in constant fear of being eaten. Kaneki Ken and us spend a lot of time with both sides and begin to understand them. Neither side is entirely right, but not entirely blameless either. They were just born a certain way. We can really empathize with pretty much everybody. Except this psycho. I get it, he had a wedding ring, we're supposed to feel bad about him now. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I just can't sympathize or connect with ugly people. Just playing, you know you're awesome. Seriously though, they say Dryden Voss is a bad villain, but I find him infinitely more threatening than this thing. Compared to Kaneki, Michiru falls short. Michiru doesn't have any of the traits that make Kaneki so good. Kaneki starts off with a super black and white worldview which he learns to change. Michiru starts off with a way of thinking that it isn't exactly the same but still pretty bland nonetheless, and it sticks with her till the very end. Another thing, Kaneki gets his cheek squeezed every chapter. This guy gets beat up all the time. While I like John Wick every now and again, when I'm pooping in the grass, Plato style, all philosophical, John Wick doesn't come into mind. Daredevil does. The Mandalorian does. People who struggle but maintain their badassery. Kaneki isn't some all-powerful chosen one, and that becomes more apparent as the series goes on. In fact, his powers are a burden to him most of the time. In the rare case where he does win, it's not because of the powers, it's because of him. Learning a new lesson, cooling his head, and logically finding a way to beat the guy. That's satisfying. Michiru just gets a new power out of nowhere, and the characters are like, Michiru, you could have done that before? No! just know. Wait, I don't know. I have no idea what is happening. Good. That's actually how it happens. But to say I wasn't entertained is a lie. She has this magnetic charisma that makes her fun to watch. Did I mention she's really cute? As a human. Most beastmen we see live and die in animosity without ever experiencing being threatened by humans. And while that ruins things quite a bit, I can kind of forgive it because of this guy. I would go into detail, but spoilers, so go on ahead and skip if you wanna. Shiro is tight. He was annoying at first, but after his backstory, I find him awesome. Imagine living for thousands and thousands of years only to spend them traumatized by constant human oppression towards your species, and your body is made of the souls of your dead loved ones. Yeah, of course, he hates humans. This is what I want. This guy being the sole reason why the beastmen in Animosity have a good life, by being the one that stands between the city and oblivion, is again tight. The show doesn't spend much time with the humans, but while I don't forgive it, I can kinda tolerate it because of this guy. But spoilers again, so XOXO. From the moment they introduced Alan Silvesta, I was praying they would make him the villain. I was expecting them to say, hey, even though he acts super suspicious, he was a nice guy. Instead, they twisted the twist I was expecting and made him a villainous beastman. I don't really know why, but I like that they didn't use him to go, not all humans are bad, but not all beastmen are good. Sometimes a show can get away with all the junk if it's executed correctly. Spider-Verse had a couple plot holes, but who cares, right? Endgame looks like they followed the time travel rules only if you don't think about it. They were entertaining enough and had a lot of other good things that far outweigh what I just said. For Tokyo Ghoul, we'll be covering strictly the manga because we don't talk about the anime. The artwork was good. The sketchy feeling of it was jarring at first, but I got used to it. It gives the action scene some movement and weight, but overall the action was kinda hard to follow. This one's a critique on all manga. Why do they use the speech bubble without the little connector thingy? It doesn't just make who's talking during the action scenes confusing, but who's talking in general. Especially when they do the disembodied text thing. Are they thinking? Who's thinking? There were times where I had to Google stuff to understand what's going on, and while the world is super thought out and interesting, the way they explain things is whack. Whack full stop. Something weird's going on and then you have a box to explain things. Ew. It doesn't always happen like that, but it a lot happens like that. Okay, that's when it's bad. When it's good, it's really good. Like I said before, the art is always great. There was never a moment I remember where I thought a character looked off. In emotional moments, my god, the art pops. These flowers mean something, I don't know what though. Also, the covers are delicious. They make me feel uneasy, and I like that. B&A looks like a trigger show, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. They got a certain vibe I dig. The colors, background, and character design make it easily more recognizable than... The animation is good when it needs to be, but the music sucks. The way they handled the music was bad. The beats did not weave into the scenes naturally at all. They totally misused what could have been a really neat trick. Silence. Silence, if used correctly, can be a great gateway to immerse yourself in a scene. Without the music, we need the characters to carry the emotion, giving things more weight and making it seem real. But if done poorly, it makes scenes really unnatural and weird, like when the characters are just talking. Couldn't you have a talking song like Monogatari? Or when Michiru first enters Animosity and it's dead silent? Couldn't you have a, like, whoa, it's weird song? Definitely like Monogatari. In cases like these, it's better to convey emotion through music. Sometimes they use the ED for music, which at first I thought was lazy, and I still kinda do, but digging through the lyrics, I think they have some relation with the story. Let's end this on a good note. I like it when this black chick says she's a mink. I don't know why it made me laugh every time except the first 2 times. That's it. This turned out to be both shorter than expected and longer than expected. I could have gone into more detail, but I didn't, because feel free to check it out and think whatever you want to think about it. And yeah, still though, I was still pretty proud of this one. Sadly, next video I'll sell out and talk about Tower of God.